Hello and welcome to Aspiring Leadership, making the move into leadership. Each week, we'll be chatting with various leaders from all different walks of life, learning from their experiences and sharing their advice. It's the perfect podcast for somebody wishing to step into a new leadership role or for a leader who's already there, wishing to continue their development. Please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. Hey everybody, happy Thursday, and you're very welcome back to another week of the Aspiring Leadership podcast, making the move into leadership. Thoroughly enjoying the last couple of weeks, meeting new people, getting to learn more, having good chats. And I'm also, again, humbled, encouraged, satisfied with the amount of goodwill, texts, people coming to me wanting to come on the podcast, recommending books I could read, also recommending other people who might be able to take part in the podcast, getting the opportunity to reconnect with people I went to university with who are going to guest in the podcast. And honestly, it's a hugely rewarding experience, particularly at this time when it's hard to find things to make us content because our life has become so small. So it is important to try and adapt and think of ways that you can amuse yourself and find that sense of gratitude and fulfillment in your own home. But when I started the podcast, one of my ambitions was to get my own friends involved in it, people who I know who have done very well in their own lives, respectively. It's not about having your Warren Buffetts or Bill Gates type of guest. Now, I'd love it if Bill Gates wants to come on. He knows where I am. But it's about having people in my life who I've found inspirational from time to time, who I look up to. This week's guest, Lourdes, is one of those people. She gave me an opportunity to move away from, let's say, a frontline entry-level role in an organization where I was just one of maybe I'd say there was about 150, 200 agents in the sales department. And it amuses me sometimes because when you think about it, one week I was sitting there on the phone, the same as everybody else, taking calls and something that I loved, actually. I found usually rewarding and exhilarating. And then the following week, I'm talking to senior stakeholders about coaching and organizational impacts and insights that might help improve the department that I'm working in. And the learning for me there is, and I would encourage anyone who's in a management role or in a senior role within in an organization to think about this. How much are you leveraging your frontline staff, and are they near their potential? Because I think in one of Stephen Covey's books, Principle-Centered Leadership, which is a book I absolutely love and found it hugely beneficial as well, and I'd encourage anybody who hasn't read it. Again, of course, some of his books can be heavy reading, as Kenneth said in the first episode, but the audiobook is available there on YouTube as far as I'm aware, if you want to pop it on. And the way he delivers it and his voice and his storytelling ability is fantastic. It's lovely Sunday morning listening. But he speaks about, the average frontline worker or someone in an entry-level job is probably being only leveraged about 20 to 30% of their full potential. So that means, if you think about it, considering how many people work on the front lines, they're the foundation of an organization. It means that an organization is quite possibly only operating at 20 to 30% of its full potential. So it's important that you fully utilize their intellectual capabilities. Now, it takes a lot of creativity and effort from a manager at that level to be able to do that. And so sometimes there's so much operational pressure to drive numbers that it's not always as easy to use the full scope of frontline workers or an entry-level role to be able to use the full scope of their intellect. But honestly, it is worth it, and you'll get so much more back from them then in relation to them doing their own role if you give them that little bit of time. But yeah, I'm so grateful to Lourdes, because I think up to that point, whether it be in that organization that we were both in at the time or in organizations previous to that, it's funny, maybe 6 weeks before I got the role with Lourdes' team, I'd applied twice for a team leader role, and I didn't even get an interview actually. And 6 weeks later, I was coaching those team leaders. So it's mad how things work out, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. It's funny how things work out, because essentially what it allowed me to do, if I had gone straight from an individual contributor into a team lead frontline manager role, basically I would have been so focused on my team, on myself, and what stepping into a coaching role did, well, it allowed me to meet new people, work in a new department, but it allowed me to see things from an organizational perspective, which was a brilliant learning, and something that I'm going to keep with me for the rest of my days. Is always think about things, think about the big picture. It is important as well to step into the detail, but the big picture is where it's all about. So that's enough about that. Before we get into the interview with Lourdes, of course, little bits of housekeeping. Honestly, I love every week I can log on to the Buzzsprout website and see the stats of the podcast, and it's actually blowing my mind how many listens and downloads it's getting. It's well above the average podcast downloads according to the stats. It's up in the hundreds. The average podcast only gets below 100 downloads apparently. So I'm thrilled with that. And it's also fascinating to see, people in Africa, people in South America, Australia, in Asia, the UK, obviously all over Europe. So it's mad how it's beginning to spread. So hugely grateful for that. So please keep sharing, keep liking, downloading, review the podcast if you can. Write in the review section on of the podcast as well. That's so helpful to generate, as I said, some buzz around it, and I do appreciate it, and it makes a little bit of effort that's involved worthwhile. So the coaching question that I'm coming to this week is in relation to what I've just spoke about. And look, if you get a little bit of time this evening, maybe you'll be sitting on your couch on a Saturday morning and you're thinking, I have nothing to do. And then this question might pop into your head. Grab a notepad, write a couple of notes on it, and see what comes from it. But looking at yourself as an individual right now, on a scale of 1 to 10, imagine for a moment your potential is 10, what you're fully capable of. Where would you say you are at? And let's say, even if it's a high number like a 7 or an 8 or a 2 or a 3, whatever the number is a relative. But the next question I'd like you to ask yourself is, what's one thing I can do to move that 7 or an 8 or a 2 or a 3 to a 7.5 or a 2 or 3.5? Look for those marginal gains, something small that you can do every single day that will make a dramatic impact to your life. So again, the question is, if your potential is 10, where would you rate yourself right now? And then to add to that, the second little piece of it is what's one small action you can take every single day that'll move that just a couple of notches closer to the 10. Very good. So let's hand things over to Lourdes now and have a chat. Again, look, I've spoken about her there. She gave me an opportunity that nobody else did. I was hugely fortunate to get that opportunity. I didn't have a relationship with her. I'd never met her before the interview. It was a very strange interview, actually, which we'll talk about. A brilliant interview and technique Lourdes has. And she has a capability as a manager to be able to recognize stuff and share observations with her team that they probably aren't fully aware of themselves. And it can be somewhat unsettling and challenging, but I found it hugely beneficial. And she gave me a lot of autonomy, which helped me grow, and trusted me a lot, which also helped me grow. Now, I made lots of mistakes, but I was able to learn from those mistakes thanks to her guidance and trust around that. And one last thing, actually, I'll say before I go to speak with her, that I'll also take with me and remember. I had been in the role for maybe a year and a half at the time, and I was very, very fortunate to get approached by the company that I work for now. And I kind of assessed the situation, and I thought to myself, okay, I'm working in the telecommunications sector. It's possibly shrinking. TV isn't as popular as it used to be anymore. And then I was working in a call center. And when I look at the call center space, it's questionable whether it'll still be there in 10 years. Digital first is what it's all about. and self-service, of course, as well, to be able to solve the issue yourself online. So I thought, look, an opportunity to move into the tech space. It's a job that I've dreamed of for my whole life. One of the massive tech organizations in the world, to work with people from all over the world. And when I gave her the news, I was apprehensive because I owed her so much. But she was so delighted for me and so encouraging about the move. So I'll always remember that. If anyone is ever coming to me, if I'm lucky enough to be in that position in the future, that I'll bring that forward as well. So let's have a chat with Lourdes and take it. Hey Lourdes, thanks a million for making time to come along today. So Lourdes was my manager for about 18 months, but she was the first person to give me the opportunity to be able to move off an entry-level role into a more senior role within the organization, and it gave me the opportunity to learn a whole lot about myself and about business, and open so many doors for me that I would have never gotten the opportunity to open otherwise. So I'm so grateful for that, Lourdes. But maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself, some of your professional background and what you're working on right now.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for the lovely introduction, Conal, and always a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me here today. So about me and my professional career, I arrived in Ireland 22 years ago. I'm originally from Spain, and started my career in Hertz, the rent-a-car company. And I was a sales reservations agent for the Spanish market. I worked there for 14 years. I progressed to a managerial role as a operations manager for Italy and Spain. Recession hit Ireland during that time, and a lot of positions or roles were made redundant. So that made me stay home for a little while. Then I moved to PayPal as a team leader for a back office department. I was there for 18 months, and during that time, that's when I started thinking about my career and considering what was next for me. Recession helped me to think about what do I want to do next and how do I want to reinvent myself. So during that time, I went to college. I qualified as a professional coach, and I moved then to Sky Island, where we worked together, and as a performance coach manager. And the main responsibility was to introduce a coaching culture within the operations area here for Sky Islands. Learned loads. First time that I had the job of that matter. And then after that, I moved to eBay, where I am now. I am the coach program manager for eBay Global Operations.
Very good. Great stuff. Something you mentioned there, Lourdes, and because you mentioned it, we might just chat about it. One of my biggest, right, I come from a family of teachers, right?
Yeah.
So the secure job, and my granny would have always said, get a nice teaching job. It's nice and cushy, and you have your holidays and it's safe. So I'm working in the private industry, a private sector like yourself, and one of my biggest fears is actually being made redundant. So I'm curious, when that happened to you, how did you bounce back and learn from that experience?
It's a very interesting question, Conal, because after 14 years, you grow an emotional attachment to the place where you are working. I've had my two children while I was working in that organization. A lot of things happened in my life while being there. So it was hard to accept because there is it is not that you are made redundant. Your role is made redundant, but you tend to think that you are the one that is not necessary any longer. So I went through a period of adapting and a period of where is my value now? Where I was used to doing things in a way, I had to learn how to adapt to a new culture. I had to learn a lot of things. Looking back now, that's the best thing that ever happened to me. I'm not sure we can never know what could have happened if I hadn't been made redundant, or my role hadn't been made redundant. Had I stayed, had I moved to another organization, would I have gone to coaching? I don't know. But looking back, it really, really put me in a position where I reflected on my career, reflected on my life, and actually I discovered and found something that I really, really was passionate about, and I wanted to do in the next 5-10 years of my life.
What is it about coaching that you love so much, Lourdes?
Coaching and I met in a period of my life where I was, I had to, because I wanted to, and I had to make some changes. And through coaching, and thanks to coaching, I went into a journey of self-discovery and self-experimentation and I reinvented myself. I don't think I would have been able to do it without experiencing coaching and without educating myself through coaching. It is leadership is a journey, and leadership is for me an inner journey. First, as you said in your introduction on the series of podcasts, leadership is you need to start by leading yourself before you can lead others. And I have a lot of things to thank coaching for. And it's just, I've changed the way I look at things, I've changed the way I live, I changed the way I think, I changed the way I feel. Therefore, I just, the tools that coaching gives you, the perspective of life that coaching gives you, I have never experienced anything like that before. For me, it was about working hard, learning on the job, and I underestimated the power that giving time to grow and giving time to yourself. I was more about others and giving myself to my job and others. And if I grow, I can help others to grow even further.
Um, one thing that you mentioned, something you quickly touched on, you mentioned the word underestimated there, right?
Mm.
I keep reading books, right, and I get a new book and I'm looking to discover something new in it, right, some new magic secret that's going to make a big difference to people I work with. But at the core of all these books that I read, and even lately, right, I went on a crucial conversations training course, and then I went on a influencing for organizational impact course. And actually, the guy who was giving the influencing for organizational impact, he goes, "This course is about two things," he said. Number one, coaching, and number two, strategy, right? And my point is, there's so much literature, there's so much training on coaching and the benefits of it in your mind. And I know it is to somewhat, but what's the reason that maybe it's underestimated from an operational perspective and not taken on to its full potential yet?
That's a great question. We, in my experience, and I can only speak for my own thoughts, my own beliefs, my own experience, we are creatures of habits, as you know very well. And we replicate what we see, and we replicate, we have an understanding of success based on what we see in others succeeding on. Operationally speaking, we tend to be very focused on procedures, very focused on things that we have done in the same way throughout the years that can be effective at a certain stage. We have, we change, new generations change. It's nearly as if we wait until we are broken to fix ourselves, while we can start working in children, for example, and the newer generations that arrive to organizations in a way that is more humanistic. And this means that we are not going to not look at KPIs, not look at performance, not look at the outputs, because that is important. Organizations are driven by that. The way we talk to people, the way we work with people, the way we make people be at their best has evolved, and we do need to evolve with them. And we need to adapt to the fact that we have a heart, we have a mind, we learn in different ways, we communicate in different ways. It's nearly as if we have we look at education, for example, and you know this very well because your family are teachers, you are a trained teacher. So why do kids fail in school? Is it because they are not as clever as others, or is it because we teach in a way that we cannot reach the way all the kids learn? I was a failure, for example,
Me too.
in my primary school and my secondary school. Nearly I wasn't worth to invest in anything. And I went back to college in my 40s, and I graduated from college in my 40s. And I was probably I was a late learner, or I discovered my purpose and or what I wanted to do, or what my passion was, or what I was good at later on. But there's an opportunity that we can do this earlier on, and coaching is a phenomenal tool, not only to bring more success and more results, but doing it in a way that people are going to be and feel more connected to the values, connected to the job they do, and not to underestimate the part they play within the organization, regardless of what title or what role they play.
Yeah, I completely agree. Interesting, you mentioned about the school part and developing as you got older. I was coaching a client recently, and they said to me, who were in their mid 20s, but it was the first, because of COVID and etc. It was the first time they met real challenge. And like, this is the first time in my life I've ever been rejected, because they'd been so successful in school, they'd been so successful in university. So I think maybe failing as much as you can is also a good thing. We have a guy who I know who I really look up to, and he's in a reasonably senior role within the org, and he keeps going, I'm here because I've failed the most. And it's a great way to look at things. One thing that's coming across, Lourdes, is how impactful coaching has been on your leadership style. I'm curious to get your perspective on what you feel the cross transferable skills are between both roles as a leader and a coach.
It's your intake and uptake to everything in life. It's if you're ready for it, it will be impactful for your life, in your personal life and your career life. But you need to put the work, and you need to be open to accept there are things that we are not perfect. I am an unfinished product today, and I'm working towards continuing polishing who I want to be, and how do I want to show up in work every day, for example. And it has made a huge impact in my leadership style. And first, so because when we start, we need to understand our leadership style, and how, and our effectiveness. And again, maybe at the beginning they are more for ourselves. It's almost as if we need to prove something to ourselves. And as years go by, and as you grow in your career or in a leadership role, you understand that actually leadership is about others. It's about how you contribute to the life and the development of other people, as well as growing yourself, but you are not in the center of everything. So it's the related emotional intelligence is one of the main differentiators for me. When I started learning more about emotional intelligence, and this is the difference between is a leader being born, or can you make a leader? And I think through emotional intelligence is a moving muscle, is something that you can develop and work on. So if you can develop your emotional intelligence, definitely you can develop as a leader.
Very good. I remember I love to prepare for things, Lourdes, right?
I know.
I remember before my interview with you spending days prepared and learning answers off by heart. And ordinarily when I go into an interview, I have, you can kind of anticipate the questions that are going to come up and prepare stories. And you stopped me halfway through the first question. You go, no, 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 no. I want to know about you. It was extremely unsettling. And the interview was almost more like a coaching session than an interview. And I remember speaking with somebody else about it afterwards. They said the same thing when you interviewed them. So yeah, tell me a little bit about your interview style and maybe some tips you'd have for leaders around that.
There's so much more that you can see and learn from person during an interview. So when I interview, what I'm looking for is the potential of that person. I'm very visual. So I'm interviewing, I'm already seeing this person doing the job. I'm already seeing the potential that this person has in doing the job, not what I have in front of me or the CV that I have in front of me. I prefer to ask questions that are going to give me the information that I need to create a picture in my mind of if I work with this person, if we work together, if we invest in this person, how far this person can go.
Very good. I know when you're in a leadership role, right? It's not about, or being a manager, it's not necessarily about being able to facilitate, but there's so much about the role that's all about communicating and landing messages and bringing people along. And I remember when I got the job with yourself that I quickly realized, based on your guidance, that I needed to enhance my facilitation style, but also it was a huge opportunity because, right, in a one-to-one context, you get to have impact on one person, but when you're facilitating in a group session, you might get to impact 10 or 15 or 20 people. And one of the ways that I learned actually was just by observing you, the way you talked, the way you interacted, the way you leveraged the room and the people within the room. Tell me a little bit about, well, I suppose, what are some tips that you might have around facilitation to leaders or managers who may feel it's a weakness of theirs?
Thank you, Conal. That's very kind. Thank you for the feedback. I never knew I could facilitate. That's something that I discovered when we were working together. It's if I put myself back 15 years ago, I would have shaken, delivering a presentation to a group of people. I am a quite reserved, very shy person as nature, and just the fact of being in front of a group of people and having all the attention and the eyes on me would have unsettled me quite a lot. And I bring it back to, it's going back to coaching again. I bring it back to all the experience when I went to educate myself to coaching. I've done several executive coaching, life coaching, neuro-linguistic programming, emotional intelligence, and that, to me, that is not something that I hang on the wall as I have on my back, for example. I have gained so much. I have absorbed like a sponge so much from every single piece of education and interaction that I have had with lecturers, with peers, and I just put it into practice, and I just discovered that my purpose is to support others. That's what I am aiming to do on a day-to-day basis that I didn't know before. I didn't know the reason why I was doing what I was doing. I thought things were coming to me and okay, I've been here a certain amount of time and it's time to progress. But I am more aware, I make more conscious decisions. I am more conscious about what I say, what the message that I want to send. And when we are, for example, when we were facilitating to a group of people, for me, I individualize. I'm talking to 10, but in reality, it's nearly as if I am in a room with one person. The human connection is very important, being relatable. We all have a history, we all have our lives, we all have challenges too. Nothing is the way it seems and looks. We all have a story behind us, and just being vulnerable and humble, it makes you relate to people even more. For me, titles are titles. It's the human interaction that I care most about, and what makes me relate to people. And for virtual environment, for example, I find that if in a way people are unsettled or they get nervous because they have to present in a room of people, I find that in a virtual setting is easier, because when you look at the camera, you are not as aware of how others, the body language, or are they looking at you, they are not looking at you, what are people thinking about me and what I say. So I just look at the camera and I completely immerse myself in it. It's nearly as if I am present in there, but I am not really putting attention to everybody. I'm putting more attention to the message that I want to send. And that helps a lot in a virtual world, and how to connect with others when they are not physically close to you.
Yeah, it's that's a point actually. I found since I've been working from home, and look, it's probably because I'm doing more hours and I'm getting better at it, and I also started doing written reflections. But I think my coaching improved because I was that little bit more courageous to dance in the moment and maybe ask a more challenging question or share a challenging observation that I mightn't have done so in a room if they were sitting in front of me. And I think now when we go back to the office, or one-on-one, that I'll have built up that bank that I'll actually be able to do it. So I agree with you. You always worked from home on a Monday when I worked in Sky, and I remember the first time I worked from home, like it was such an unsettling experience, because you're like, God, I have to really work here now, or there's a fear factor or a trust element there. But what kind of advice or tips do you have around remote management now that it's going to be the new normal and something that we're going to continue to do, I imagine, forever?
Yeah. From my experience, I believe being visible, it's important. In a virtual world, if you are not visible, you don't exist. If you want people to make you participate, if you want people to think of you, or your area or your department, if you want people to involve you in decisions and conversations, you need to make yourself visible. Reach out to people. Coffee breaks, what we miss from the office is they call it the water
cooler moments.
Water cooler moments, that you go to put some water in your cup or whatever, and somebody comes by, and yes, the conversation starts from there. So we are missing all that. So it requires some effort. It requires yourself making the effort, actually, and not waiting for others to do it, because if we all wait for each other, it will never happen. Resilience is important, and resilience is important in all aspects of leadership, not only working virtually. But it's nearly as if you cannot build resilience unless you feel the pain or you experience pain in a way. So it's about looking at the positives. It's about making it work for you. It's about not comparing yourself with others. What works for others doesn't necessarily work for you. So you need to find a way to make virtual or remote work for you, work for your team. So for example, my team, we noticed we were meeting for meetings and work, talk about work and what we had to do. And we realized actually we are missing the one-to-one interaction on how about your day and, what did you do yesterday? What are your plans for the weekend? Even though we had the chit chat at the beginning of each meeting. So we decided to put breakfast, tea time, breakfast for our North America colleague and tea time for ourselves here in Ireland. And whoever can make it, makes it. Whoever can't, but it's every day in our calendar at the same time. And if we don't have any other clash in our calendars, we join, and there's no work talk. It's all about a silly talk or whatever. We talk about the weather, we go and grab a coffee or a tea, and it's just half an hour just to connect on a one-to-one basis, but nothing related to work.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's massively important to make those little slots within your calendar, either intentionally like that or even on a one-to-one basis. But basically what you're saying there, Lourdes, is number one, visibility is important to keep yourself within the picture. Resilience, being able to come back from failure and be resilient. And then the last piece there is keep the social side of stuff going. One last question, Lourdes, as we begin to wrap up. What's your wish for the next 5 years?
My wish for the next 5 years is to continue my growth. I love to do a master's, and I have my goals written down for the next 5 and 10 years. So it's to work day by day to make sure that I can make myself accountable for what I want to achieve. The most important thing overall, apart from career, apart from studies, apart from a degree is a degree, a diploma is a diploma. At the end of the day, it's not going to make you a better person or not. It's not going to make you better at what you do if you don't know how to bring it to life or apply it to life. But for me, the most important thing is continue to be able to bring my purpose to life on a day-to-day basis. And coaching allows me to do that. And coaching allows me to be a better person every day. And this is where I want to actually achieve, that I can be internally happy with myself and that I can contribute to others in the most positive way possible, given that I am not perfect.
Very good. Super great stuff, Lourdes. Let me quickly summarize some of the key takeaways from me, and please jump in if I miss any. But right back to the start, you spoke about your experience, and you spoke about, I love the way you put it, you aren't made redundant, your role was made redundant, but then you leverage that opportunity to pivot your career, grow new skills, and take it in a completely different direction, which obviously then was down the coaching path. We spoke then a small bit about how coaching can be integrated into the operation, maybe a little bit more. There's more potential for it there, I definitely feel anyways. And the reason behind it, and it's a point I'm aligned with you on, is it's just that we're creatures of habit, and sometimes we're more efficient perhaps than effective, and we look for the quick wins rather than the long lasting change. From a leadership perspective, then it allows you to enhance and develop people. It's about emotional intelligence. And then we spoke about your interviewing technique, and I think the tips that you're saying there is try and understand the person more, how they like to think, get them to paint a picture for you, drill into what they're saying a little bit more. And then 10 things up there. Your wish for the 10 years is obviously next 5 years is to continue to grow, focus on your purpose of trying to grow yourself and grow others. And then how important learning is, and emotional intelligence again, and coactive coaching were two things you mentioned there.
Absolutely.
Good stuff, Lourdes. Thanks a million. I really appreciate your time.
You're very welcome. Pleasure to be here with you, Conan.
Thanks, Lourdes.
Bye-bye.
Excellent stuff there from Lourdes. Again, her authenticity, her kindness, her compassion came across to me there, as it always did when I worked for her. We were briefly chatting there just as we finished the interview about the concept of running your own race and ensures sure that you focus on yourself. And she did briefly touch on it there about don't compare yourself as a leader to others. You're a completely different leader with a completely different style. Stay true to your values, stay true to your purpose. But to be able to stay true to those, I know that I have to do a lot of work on my values, thinking about them, writing about them. I have a little bit of a 15-minute slot on my calendar every Monday morning at 8:30 where I sit down, I reread my mission statement, reread my vision statement, reread my values. I'll choose a value that I'm going to focus on that week and make a goal around it. And it helps me keep grounded, and I will adapt my values and change my values and try to clarify them down. Brené Brown talks about that actually, where she tries to get it down to 2 values, and those 2 values then kind of encompass and ground all the rest of their values. So stay true to your own values and run your own race. Great stuff, Lourdes. Thanks so much. And again, I think I'll do a panel discussion in a couple of months when I have a number of guests built up and get a few people together from different industries, and it'd be interesting to discuss something that may be topical at the time. Last couple of things before we go. Remember the coaching question this week. Thinking about yourself and maybe your team as well, if you're already in a leadership position, but on a scale of 1 to 10. Where are you at now? Are you 1, or 2, or 3, or 4? And the number is a relative. Let's take this from a growth mindset perspective. Don't be hard on yourself, okay? Be kind to yourself. You're doing a lot of stuff really well to get to that number. But what could you do to move it up a notch? Even 0.1 of a notch. What's the one little habit that you can introduce into your life each day that will have a significant impact on you as a person? Please like, share, subscribe, review, all that kind of crack. It really helps the podcast, generates a little bit of buzz about it. Helps to promote the guests. Like, this is all about the guests at the end of the day. I'm only here to facilitate the conversation and meet the people and learn from them. So yeah, really appreciate it. Okay, good stuff, guys. Have a great week and chat to you again next Thursday. Remember, get involved. Thanks so much for listening to Aspirational Leadership, Making the Move into Leadership. In the review section, please comment what's one learning you've taken from this week's podcast and what's one action you'll take based on the learning. Tune in again next week where we'll speak with another inspirational leader who'll share their story with us. And remember, like, share and subscribe to the podcast.